Today I'm going to talk to you about this is a chip clip. Actually, it doesn't look like a clip, does it? It's not got a spring on it. But I made mine kind of Christmassy because I built it just before Christmas and I gave them a couple away for gifts. So kind of cool. It's a fairly simple thing to build. It's one piece with a bolt on one end and a rubber band on the other. And the way you do it is you'd have your bag that's opened, and you'd flip over the top of the bag, the open end, and you slip this over, see it's got a slot in it. It runs the whole length. And you run that, see how I just split it with my fingers a little bit and I'm holding it. So you get it started, then just run it all the way across the bag. Then you put this rubber band on the far side. Put this rubber band just a couple like that and it holds it on. And that's your chip clip. So I don't know if it's what the right word, it's probably not a chip clip, but close enough. So that's what we're going to be designing today. So again, this is my prototype. I liked it, it works, so I'm going to go ahead and just run off this one for the dimensions. So we're going to do a drawing of it, and then we're going to come up with a material list. So it is 12 inches long by 3/4 by 5/8. So I got to remember those three dimensions. Actually, you wouldn't have to, just draw a picture of. And we're going to do 3 views as always. So let's do the top view first. That'll be with the. We'll just figure that this is the top and this is the front then. And I don't think we'll need an extra view, probably just those 2 views today. So let's see here, we have this right here. And we're doing the top view first. So we have a slot that we've actually cut, so it's a real feature. This is not a hidden line, it's a real feature. So you want to make it, that's really straight, right? So anyway, and then we know the length is 12 inches. There we go, and 12 inches. By the way, everything I do is in inches. I don't do a whole lot of metric, if I can help it. Just been using standard for a long time. All right, and then we also have a little bolt on the end. So we'll just show the head of the bolt and the nut on the other side, the washers, and a little bolt here. We'll just show that like that. And then the rubber band we'll just add at the end because we know we'll need a rubber band. All right, so the length is 12, and the top view would show it to be 5/8 wide. And then we'll do an expanded view of this, but the slot length, we're going to run it on the opposite side. So our overall length, we're showing the stock length here, but on here we're going to show a feature length, and we'll do that on the opposite side. Makes it easier. These lines, see in the drafting world, these lines are pathetic. You know, there's supposed to be very consistent lines. There's dimension lines and all sorts of different types of lines you use, and they're different thicknesses, and my line thicknesses are awful. But let's just find out what that is. We'll measure it. I think it's 1 inch. But that's why I'm going to just measure to make sure, just because I can. Oh, it's 7/8. That's fine. We'll just make it 7/8. So we know that all but 7/8 of this 12-inch length is cut with a slot. And I'll draw an expanded view off to the side over here to show that. That's what you do when you need to show a feature. If it's too small to see on a normal thing, then you expand it. And usually like twice as big or something like that usually works out pretty good. Sometimes you have to even go bigger if it's a very small item that's very critical. Okay, now we're going to do the front view. See, this is 5/8. The other one, the reason we're showing that, because the front view is actually going to show this bolt hole and where it's located in the stick. And then we'll also show the change in this, because it's not 5/8, it'll be 3/4. So let's do that. Let's see here, draw another long skinny stick here. And then we'll just show a dash line for the slot, because that would be a hidden line. And we got our bolt right here. We'll have a large washer. Actually, you'll be able to see the washer, so it's just a circle. And then in the middle of that, we'll have our bolt. Well, we're just going to represent that as a dashed line, or a, what is that called, a center point. And then you have a solid line. So from the center point, you have a solid line coming down, like so. And if that is 7/8, we probably want this at 7/16. Okay? And then, up and down, I got that over here, so I'm going to, this 5/8 dimension I got like that. So this one I'm going to put as 3/4. Those were our two critical dimensions. And then for this, so if this is 3/4, so it's half 3/4, we just went through this a little bit ago. You subtract, or you multiply the top across. I'll just show it quick. This is critical to be able to do this. Times 1/2 is equal to, so across the top, 3, across the bottom is 8, because 3 times 1 is 3, 4 times 2 is 8. Multiplying fractions is fairly simple, as long as you know that you've got to keep the top multiplied and keep that number on top and keep the bottom number on the bottom. So 4 times 2 would stay on the bottom, it's 8, and the top number is 3 times 1 is 3. So we know that this dimension from here to here is 3/8. Okay? All right. And like I say, fairly simple. We'll just draw up over here that this is going to be everything has been figured out pretty much for us. There's some changes as far as what we use these pieces of hardware for, but hardware is pretty much figured out. There's not, so you have to work with the hardware. And they have, the way they chose to designate screws is sometimes when they get down small, like under a 1/4 inch, they go to something like gauge. And gauge is spelled G-A-U-G-E. Now there are several different types of gauge. Steel isn't, you can get 4 gauge or 3 gauge or 8 gauge steel, and that's different thicknesses of steel, but it's very set, and they fall within a certain parameter. And screws are no different, but it's a different size gauge. So don't think that steel number 8 gauge is the same as a number 8 screw. It's not. So it's just something to think or remember. Okay, so it's 8 32 screws. So that's the size, that's the diameter of the screw, is number 8. And this is the amount of threads per inch. So if you have a screw thread in 1 inch, there's going to be 32 threads. Okay? However many across, and you know that screws look like this, right? So all those would be connected to an opposing V on the other side. So that's something to remember. And it's so they have 1/4 20, I think it's 5/16, 18, and it goes on and on. But when they get under a 1/4 inch, a lot of times they're going to a gauge. So it'd be they have 8, 10, 12 gauge. 12 gauge is very close to 1/4 inch. And then as it gets smaller, you can go, I think it's 6 is something, and 4 is 4-40. So anyway, we can do an entire class on screw threads sometime. Anyway, so it's an 832 by 1 inch long. So diameter, threads per inch, and the length of the screw. That's the way all screws and bolts are done. It's always the size, diameter, how many threads, and 1 inch. Now, wood screws are entirely different. And I think I was through that last year on one of the things, and we'll probably do a little bit more on wood screws later. But we're going to put this 832 screw through there. So the other thing we need here is a 3/16 hole centered on these dimensions. So it'll be the way to write diameter. I'll just write diameter, DIA. Okay, that's much simpler. They have a symbol that stands for diameter, but we don't need to use that. We'll just write diameter. So if you're writing or making your own project, whatever it is, it's important to label everything so you know what you're pointing at. Otherwise, it'll get a little confusing. And so you'll put diameter 3/16. Now, there's times when you'll make a counter bore. Remember what a counter bore is last year? Well, actually, most sixth graders aren't going to know what that is. A counter bore is like that, and then you'll have your screw thread that goes all the way through, or not a screw thread, but just a hole. And what that does is allows the screw head to sink underneath the surface so it's flush. So your screw would look like this. That way your head won't be up, and that's called the counter bore. So this is called the C-bore. C-bore. I digress. All right, I can go on and on about this stuff. So anyway, we have diameter at 3/16. It's going to be all the way through. You can see the bolt up here that kind of says it. We tell you what the bolt is. And we also need 2 fender washers, and that's what they call them. It's a fender washer. I can tell you why, but I'm not going to go through it today. Fender washer, so we're going to have a 3/4 inch. Actually, what's 3/4 by number 8. You might have this in reverse. I think it's actually a number 8 by 3/4 fender washer. Let's just change that. Washer. And we need one for the top and one for the bottom. And we will also need an acorn nut. So it's called actually a nylock. So a number 8 nylock. I think this is the way it's spelled. My spelling is atrocious. So NYLOC, nylock, nut. Okay, and we need 2 of those, 2 washers, and 1 nut. So this is everything we need. So now we're going to make our material list. Material list. Okay, so this is letter A. And then we only have 1 piece of wood this time. So we're just going to go over label. Label, quantity, size, and material. I'd like you to keep it lined up this way every time. That way it's easy for me to check your material to make sure you got everything. So then letter A is our piece here. We've already labeled it. We need 1. The size is 3/4 by 5/8 by 12 inches. We're going to be making a set of 4 of these for the kids that choose to do this project. Actually, I think it's a mandatory project. So we're going to do a set of 4 for each kid. Okay, so, but we're not going through that whole process of quantifying material this year. Okay, then we need all these in our material list too. So we have, we'll call this letter B, C, and D. I don't usually label screws. Like sometimes I'll put in like quantity of 25 screws, and I'll just say what size the screw is. I typically don't do that a lot. If I know there's a hole there, and I'll just put the screw in. But anyway, for our purposes, we need to do that. So we need 1 832 by 1 inch screw. 1 832 by 1 inch screw. Letter C, we need 2 of the 8 by 3/4 fender washers. And letter D, I made 2 letter Ds, that's funny. Okay, and letter D I'm getting, I did it again. Circle, right side, there we go, all right. We'll need 1 of those, and that's a number 8 nylock. That was, yeah, NYLOC, I think. Nut. All right, so that's our material list. We know we need to have all those materials. So, and that's all I have for you on that.